Good morning. It is good to be with you. I'm Jessica Layton, in for Joe and Savannah today. We begin this hour in South Florida, where President Trump is conducting a series of major meetings with world leaders. Later today, the president will meet with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in an attempt to jumpstart his stalled Gaza peace plan. The Israeli leader, who remains wanted by the International Criminal Court for war crimes in Gaza, has been accused by critics of not moving fast enough to phase 2 of the plan. Now, that meeting comes after Mr. Trump held talks with Ukraine's President Zelenskyy at Mar-a-Lago on Sunday as part of efforts to end the war with Russia. Both sides sat down for discussions just hours after President Trump spoke on the phone with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at a news conference yesterday, Mr. Trump said Kyiv and Washington were getting closer despite some sticking points.
We could be very close. There are one or two very thorny issues, very tough issues, but I think we're doing very well. We've made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff. But I think when the president says 95, I think, could be close to 95%.
In just a few moments, we will hear from Michael O'Hanlon, the Director of Research for the Foreign Policy Program at the Brookings Institution. But before that, let's get the latest from NBC News White House correspondent Yamiche Alcindor. Yamiche, good morning. Talk to us about yesterday's meetings on Ukraine. What do we know about what those so-called thorny issues are?
Well, good morning, Jessica. Based on what we heard from President Trump and President Zelenskyy, the thorny issues really are a couple, which is one, that the U.S., Europe, and Ukraine really need to get together and decide finally on a security guarantee plan for Ukraine. Because, of course, Russia has not just invaded Ukraine once. They've done it at least twice when we think about Crimea several years ago. So Ukraine really wants a sort of guarantee that Russia isn't going to say that they're going to sign on to this and then invade again. So that's a security guarantee are very, very important. And Zelenskyy said they're about 90% there with the U.S., European, and Ukraine security guarantees, and 100% there with the U.S., Ukraine security guarantees. So that's interesting. The other big issue is territory, the Donbass region. It's a very big region in Ukraine for industrial and the heartland of the country. President Zelenskyy had said that they were not going to want to give up any sort of territory. Now he's essentially being open, saying, well, if there is sort of territory that needs to be swapped, it's going to be in a referendum so that all Ukrainians can vote on this to say, well, we're going to give up this land in order for Russia to not invade us anymore and for this fighting to stop. Of course, all of this is happening while the fighting is continuing. So there's also the thorny issue of just the ongoing death that is happening. But that's also in some ways putting pressure, especially on President Trump, to try to get this done, Jessica.
On the issue of land and really everything else in terms of the peace, what did we hear from President Zelenskyy?
What was really interesting, this was a much more positive meeting than we've seen in the past. Now, there have been other positive meetings, but who can forget the meeting earlier this year where President Zelenskyy was literally put out of the White House? This time around, we heard President Zelenskyy really sound more positive. Take a listen to some of what he said.
We can have referendum on any kind of points of this plan. If the plan will be very difficult for our society, very difficult, of course our society has to choose and has to vote because it's their land, the land not of one person.
So there you have it, President Zelenskyy, again, doubling down on the idea that Ukraine and he as the leader who can't just give away land in a peace plan, that he really needs the people of Ukraine to vote on this. I also think it's interesting when you think, again, back to that meeting where President Trump in the Oval Office several months ago was calling him disrespectful and saying that he wasn't really happy and thankful enough for the U.S. being involved. Now, President Trump was saying he's working very hard, President Zelenskyy, to try to get this done. We should also know that President Trump said that he spoke to President Putin and believes that he's interested in peace, which is something that President Zelenskyy has always pushed back on. European leaders have also said that President Putin isn't interested in peace. But the fact that President Putin and President Trump are talking as these meetings are going on also is a sign of, at least a positive sign that something could happen, Jessica.
We know that this is a White House that wants to say we were the one that brokered the deal to end these wars. We know the Trump administration is keen to move forward in its Gaza peace plan as well. Is that something the president will pressure Netanyahu on later today?
It's certainly going to be a topic of discussion. President Trump was very, very happy to talk about this 20-point peace plan that was able to come together. And there was essentially an initial agreement on it, but there's several phases. We're in phase 1 right now. But phase 2 is going to be, one, giving up the last Israeli hostage that's in Gaza, but also it's going to be Hamas putting down arms, and then this sort of phase out of Israel pulling out from Gaza. So there are a number of things that the president wants to go to. He wants to get to phase 2. Right now, they're still in phase 1. And there has been a little bit of skirmishes going on and some death going on. And that has also been problematic for some people. So they're really trying to sort of get this together. And that's something that the president's certainly going to be talking to the prime minister about. Jessica.
Great insight, Yamiche. Thanks so much. Let's now bring in Michael O'Hanlon for more analysis on the president's high-stakes diplomacy. Michael, good morning. I want to start with yesterday's Ukraine meeting. How do you assess the latest round of talks? Do you think Kyiv and Washington will agree on a proposal that will ultimately be acceptable to Moscow?
That's a very good question, and it's possible. The answer is yes. This is not just some fantasy. This is actually addressing the real issues, the process that's underway. I have no idea at what point Vladimir Putin would decide to regain his sanity and his humanity, or maybe it's too late for that, but to actually call an end to this war and decide that the amount of land that he's already stolen from Ukraine, plus whatever little more he can get at the negotiating table, is enough. I also don't know at what point Putin would accept some kind of an American promise, along with other NATO countries, but not through NATO itself, to actually help backstop Ukraine's security. I'm not really sure we're offering a guarantee. That is a powerful word that tossed around lightly these days, but I don't know that that's really what the United States is going to be promising. But there are various ways in which we could make it seem likely, or more likely, that we would come to Ukraine's defense in the event of a future Russian attack. We'll see if Moscow can live with any of that. So far, they haven't been willing to. But, you know, on the pragmatism of sort of stopping the fighting and accepting the territorial division more or less where the front line is right now, I think President Trump's being very pragmatic, and he's forcing Zelenskyy to accept that kind of a framework. And on the idea that Ukraine's not going to be in NATO, he's also convinced President Zelenskyy that's the reality. So I would give Trump credit for those pragmatic steps forward. It's still a 50-50 proposition.
I want to turn to the other war and today's meeting with Netanyahu. We've talked about how progress on this U.S.-backed Gaza peace plan has really slowed down a lot recently. Michael, why do you think it's taking so long to move forward with phase 2? And is the Trump administration, do you think, getting a little frustrated with Netanyahu behind the scenes?
Can't tell on that last question. There have been indications of that kind of White House frustration with Netanyahu all year, but then we hear about they had some secret plan on Iran or this or that, and I'm not really convinced there is any big daylight. But let's also bear in mind what's being discussed here. What's being discussed here, at least in theory, is a definitive end to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the creation of a Palestinian state. That is still an extraordinary long-shot proposition. So if we're 50-50 on Ukraine-Russia ending in the next few weeks or months, I think we're still 20-80 against the Gaza plan working, because the idea of, as your correspondent just said, Hamas disarming and then Arab, or at least international force coming in to help secure Gaza, along with American and Israeli oversight and the creation of a Palestinian state. These have been the dreams for 30 plus years. And I don't know that we're really any closer to them today. So President Trump, again, is on the right track here. The concept is correct. I am skeptical that many Israelis or many Palestinians really buy into it, and especially Israelis, who, if anything, since October 7th, 23, have been increasingly against the idea of a Palestinian state.
We're also hearing that Netanyahu might try to make the case for attacking Iran again following those strikes on the country's nuclear facilities earlier this year. That's according to a person with direct knowledge of the plans, and 4 former U.S. officials briefed on them. Michael, are you concerned the U.S. could be dragged into yet another direct conflict with Iran, given all of this?
Yes. I think the odds of this kind of conversation playing out are much higher than the odds of the two-state solution going forward. And I have little doubt that Netanyahu would want American cover and even participation in a future set of airstrikes. You know, President Trump, if he were persuadable to do that, would probably hope that he can keep the same kind of limits on a future strike that he kept on the ones last June, or at worst, the sort of thing we're doing off the coast of Venezuela with these occasional geographically limited strikes. But that's a dangerous way to think about war, and war has a way of sucking you in. So, yes, I'm concerned. There's no doubt that this is a thorny proposition, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if what Netanyahu wants is another round of airstrikes.
Bleak situation in so many regions. Michael O'Hanlon, thanks so much. This morning, tens of millions of people are waking up under weather alerts as a powerful winter storm sweeps across a big stretch of the country. It is threatening to disrupt travel at airports from the upper Midwest to the Northeast as folks try to make their way home from their holiday destinations. And it, of course, follows a weekend of whiteout conditions on the roads and damage from a suspected tornado in Illinois. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster has the latest from Chicago O'Hare International Airport, where a ground stop was briefly issued last night.
Hi there, Jessica. Well, it's already a tough morning for some folks here at Chicago's O'Hare Airport, where outside the airport, folks are dealing with a mix of snow, wind, icy conditions on the roads as they head to this location. Now, they're trying to avoid some of those delays that we saw here at this airport just yesterday, where you saw more than half of the flights leaving Chicago's O'Hare Airport yesterday were delayed or canceled, folks hoping to avoid much of what we saw yesterday as this massive winter storm really marches across the country, bringing a little bit of everything. In the Northeast, the concern is the rain, the freezing rain, up to a quarter, or I should say a half inch of ice forecasted for some parts between Pennsylvania all the way up to Maine. In the Midwest, especially the upper Midwest, it's the snow and the wind, blizzard-like conditions seen in Minnesota, where officials there have declared a snow emergency in some parts. There's videos of cars that have spun off the freeways and crews trying to get cars out of those icy embankments. And then here in Illinois, southern Illinois, there was the threat of tornadoes. Several tornado reports that we saw overnight, including this tornado in central Illinois. I should say it's a suspected tornado. We'll wait for National Weather Service to really confirm, but look at some of the damage that we saw there. You saw roofs of homes torn off. We know that in some areas, apparently a school was hit, debris just completely scattered throughout the road there. Unfortunately, we're expecting more of these tough conditions as the storm continues to move through and bring that rain, that snow, that wind, just tough conditions for these holiday travelers. Jessica?
What a mess. Shaq, thanks so much. And we want to bring you more on that storm system that's going to impact travelers from the Great Lakes to the Northeast. We've got the latest now with your morning news now. Meteorologist Kevin Jeans joins us now. Kevin, good morning.
Hey, Jessica, good morning. So we have wind becoming a big issue now. Wind alerts and winter alerts across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Wind alerts impacting 109 million people. So as the rain moves out, cold air moves in, the wind will be ramping up across the Great Lakes and the Northeast. But the rain, it's heavy at times, still moving across the Northeast, Pennsylvania, and New York. That will exit later this afternoon and this evening, but the wind is going to ramp up and it's going to be significantly colder this evening and tonight. So rain continues through the day, and then you have lake effect setting up over the eastern side of the Great Lakes as the low pressure system moves eastward across eastern Canada and eventually moves out. But big time snow total is expected on the eastern side of the Great Lakes. So sunshine in the middle of the country, rain, wind, and snow across the Northeast. Santa Ana winds also setting up across Southern California again. Gusts could be up to 85 miles per hour. All the rain that they've had, at least the soil is wet, so not as much of a wildfire risk, but you're still looking at the potential of some trees going down as the winds ramp up. Traveling along the interstates across the Northeast and the Great Lakes, high winds, gusts even up to 60 miles per hour across parts of Michigan and across the Northeast. So heavy snow, you could see upwards of 1 to 2 feet even of snow from that lake effect setting up on the eastern edges of the Great Lakes. And then all about the cold after that. So 24 to 36 inches of localized amounts possible. Lake effect machine setting up again. And I mentioned also, Jessica, the cold air comes because we're still above average up and down the East Coast today. But as we go through the next 24 hours, significantly colder over the next couple of days. We're getting back to reality this time of year.
Yep.
Can't stay that warm for this long, but big travel impacts from the wind, especially.
People may just have to extend their stay at grandma's for a few more days.
Good idea.
Kevin, thanks so much. An investigation by the NTSB is underway in New Jersey this morning following a deadly mid-air crash. At least one person is dead, another critically injured after two helicopters collided in mid-flight yesterday. NBC News correspondent Stephen Romo has the details from the scene.
A terrifying sight in the skies over South Jersey. Two helicopters colliding, with this one appearing to lose control before going down.
Our personnel responded out to the area of 100 Basin Road for two helicopters crashing. 100 Basin Road for a helicopter crash.
A witness describing the scene.
First, I heard a big explosion, like a crash. I saw the orange-red helicopter spinning.
Both aircraft crashed in a field near Hamilton, New Jersey around 11:30 a.m. local time. The FAA releasing a preliminary statement saying in part an Enstrom F-28A helicopter and Enstrom 280C helicopter collided. Only the pilots were on board each aircraft. One helicopter engulfed in flames after the crash.
Got one helicopter fully involved. I'm looking for the second one.
Emergency crews racing to put out the fire. Witness video showing the plume of black smoke billowing into the air.
The planes took off from the Hamilton Municipal Airport, that's Airport N81, and it was probably just a moment or two after their flight started that they collided.
A spokesperson for Hamilton's municipal government telling NBC News one person was killed in the crash and another was taken to the hospital with critical, life-threatening injuries. The NTSB is leading this investigation, and that agency can release a preliminary report typically in just a matter of weeks, but a full report could take a year or more, and there are so many people who saw what happened here who want to know exactly what went wrong. Stephen Romo, NBC News, back to you.
Stephen, thank you. A quick-thinking father helped rescue his 15-year-old daughter from an alleged kidnapper in Texas on Christmas Day. The teen was taking her dog for a walk, and when she didn't come back, her dad jumped into action and found her by tracking her cell phone. NBC's Ryan Chandler has that story.
It was a parent's worst nightmare on Christmas Day. Police say a 15-year-old girl was out walking her dog in Porter, Texas, just north of Houston, when a man threatened her with a knife, abducting her. When she didn't return at her normal time, her father set out to find her, using parental controls to pinpoint her phone's location. That's when the sheriff's office says the father found her and the dog in a truck in a partially wooded area almost 2 miles away, rescuing her from a man who was partially undressed. 23-year-old Giovanni Rosales Espinoza, now held in the Montgomery County Jail without bond, charged with aggravated kidnapping and indecency with a child. Law enforcement experts say the tech that helped track the teenager was key in this case.
You got to sit down with your teenagers and explain to them that this is to keep them safe. If you want somebody to come rescue you, having your location is critical. I'd make him Father of the Year.
The sheriff saying Christmas is a day meant for joy, but this man chose to shatter that joy by targeting a child. Neighbors here tell us this is a sleepy neighborhood, with kids often running up and down the streets. They're praising a father's bravery and intuition. Ryan Chandler, NBC News, Porter, Texas.
Officials in Hawaii are pleading with people to follow the rules when visiting the Hawaii Volcanoes National Park after a frightening incident caught on video. Check this out. A live stream camera spotted two men getting too close to the active eruption at Kilauea. Ali Duklo with our NBC affiliate in Honolulu has the details.
The V1 camera at Kilauea caught two trespassers during the 39th episode of Kilauea's ongoing eruption. One of them is seen throwing a shaka at the live stream cam, which is located in an area close to the public along Halemaumau crater's northwest rim. The Hawaiian Volcano Observatory told us that there were no USGS scientists or authorized personnel in the area at the time.
I think it's really just for the clicks, just for the views, to grab attention to themselves.
Lou and Anna Itori have their own media company, Two Pineapples, that tracks and records eruptions. Over the past year, they've caught 9 people trespassing into closed-off areas of Hawaii Volcanoes National Park.
And we're seeing it more often now than we have in the past. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of videos and images, all from out of bounds, being posted on all platforms nonstop.
In June, a 30-year-old man from Boston nearly died after plunging 30 feet off a cliff when he went off the Byron Ledge Trail without a flashlight or headlamp. The U.S. Geological Survey has cameras around the crater to monitor Kilauea 24/7. They've not only given scientists a window into the current activity, they've also allowed thousands around the world to watch the eruption. Those cameras are also in unsafe areas, like the V3 cam, which was buried by a lava fountain during episode 38 earlier this month.
Just follow the rules, follow what you see on national parks websites and social media platforms. Stay in the zone.
The Itoris are reminding other photographers that it's possible to capture photos and videos safely and respectfully. They're hoping others keep in mind that by breaking the rules, they're not only putting themselves at risk, but others too.
It's concerning for all of us, the viewers, the travelers, first responders, because our family are all first responders.
I think these people just have no consideration for others.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.